Hello and welcome to Stretford Paddock. My name is Joe. This is Alex. We're here for the preview for Manchester United against Arsenal in the Barclays Premiership.
The Barclays Premier League.
Yeah, that's the 1993 version. Barclays Premiership, or the Carling Premiership as it once
Used
was.
to be. Was it Budweiser as well for a bit?
Who cares?
Who cares?
United have got Arsenal at the weekend, coming off the back of what, on paper, has been a brilliant sort of response to the 6-1 drubbing at Spurs, but it's not been plain sailing, has it? Looking at the form of United coming into this game, obviously we beat Leipzig 5-0 the other day. Yeah. We drew with Chelsea, which got wild criticism despite, we've watched Man United long enough in the Premier League to know a point against Chelsea is never the worst result. No. Also before that was the victory over PSG away, and then before that... before that, it was a bit rough. Yeah, well, we actually supposed to beat Newcastle, but before that was the Tottenham game. Yeah, so United on a bit of a good run of form. Are you confident then, because of that run in form, going into this game against Arsenal on Sunday?
Yeah, I think that the Champions League form has lifted everyone a little bit. 2 massive wins, 2 great... I don't know whether you saw the ESPN pundits slagging off United's performance, which was ridiculous, saying it wasn't that good of a performance. They kind of did a smash and grab and beat Leipzig 5-0. Yeah. Madness. But anyway... Manchester United on a good bit of form with the Champions League thing. The Chelsea game, like you said, got kind of blown out of proportion in terms of they said that it wasn't that good. But I think if you'd have put on paper Manchester United versus Chelsea, I think that if you looked at the start of the season, they've spent better in the transfer market supposedly. All five of those
spent
signings.
More. Whether it's better, they've definitely spent more.
Definitely spent more. Yeah, did well in that sense. All of them played, and we kept them pretty quiet. We did well with it, and I thought that 0-0, I think that the fact that Chelsea weren't that good made it feel worse, and we should have beat them. But I think that's my only concern going into this game is what Ollie does, whether he still plays a little bit safe or he just goes, you know what, we're playing good football, we're scoring goals, let's just go and beat Arsenal. Yeah,
well, it's interesting that you say that because United have only lost 1 game in their last 8, despite, like you said, this criticism against Leipzig, who we beat 5-0, and they found a way to criticise Ole in the way that United played. Obviously, again, before that, 1 win in the last 8 games, 1 loss in the last 8 games, and that was, of course, the one against Tottenham. But Ole's come out talking about rotation, talking about how you think he's going to tackle this one. He said, at the moment, we're looking at a Man United squad, or we're looking like a Man United squad. I've got opportunities, competitions for place, and any successful team in the modern era have to have the option to rest players, to rotate, and that is probably the only way you can last in the most intense league in the world. And also, with the Champions League involved, you want to go for the trophies. So it does seem as though we are going to continue to see this Van der Beek for Bruno, or Bruno for Pogba, or Matic for Fred. These sort of small micro rotations almost, where it's not 11 players changed every game, but each game 2 or 3 change from the last one, 2 or 3 change from the last one. Do you think that's the right way to do it? And especially while the squad doesn't really have any injuries, do you think it's maybe the only way to do it?
I think you have to do it. I think this is what, like they mentioned, this is the only way you're going to be able to win trophies. You have to rotate the squad. They have to be fresh coming into these games. I think that last year you had the option to rest players in midweek with Europa League because you weren't playing the likes of PSG, you weren't playing the likes of RB Leipzig. But this year you have to play strong teams every single week. So I think what he's done so far is managed to rotate the team. I think the fact that he's been able to make changes, 3 games on the spin, put different teams out, play 3 different formations, and get 2 wins and a draw out of those 3 games is really good. And I expect to see maybe not a completely different lineup, but maybe go back to something close to the Chelsea team. But there's definitely going to be more changes again.
And something that we've seen as well, you talk about changes in formation between games. We saw against PSG, we actually used 3 different formations in 1 game, which is something that Ole's been criticised for, is a lack of tactical flexibility, or a lack of subs, a lack of rotation even toward the end of the season. But it goes to show his comments, and again, we know with Ole that he'll say one thing in the press conference and then he'll do another thing on the pitch because he likes to defend his players, he likes to defend the club above all else. He's not going to come out and say how crap everyone is, like Jose did the other night again about his Tottenham side. But he says things like, I'm happy with the squad, I'm happy with this. But then he's rotating all the time. People have a go at him for why did you bring this guy on so late against Sevilla? Why didn't you make any changes? Why did this happen? Because you look on the bench and the players weren't there. Now they are. We started with a 3 at the back or a 5 at the back against PSG. Then we brought on different players, and we went to a 4-2-3-1, and then we ended the game. Went to the diamond to start with, and then we ended the game with a 4-2-3-1. So now that Ole's actually got players, now that he's actually got options where he can rotate or he can change it in game, he does. And there's no denying now that Ole has at least somewhat of a tactical understanding, and anywhere from somewhat to seemingly pretty excellent. He can outwit the likes of Thomas Tuchel with changes in formation and style, and he did the same with Nagelsmann on Wednesday.
Absolutely, yeah. And he almost did that against Chelsea, where just making a couple of changes, putting a little bit more pressure on them. They did kind of sit. They did have to alternate and sit back against us. They, for the first half, I think they fancied themselves and thought they were going to win the game and things like that. I think it was a bit of a 50-50. But towards the middle to the end of the second half, when we made our changes, when we kind of pressed them a little bit more, when Pogba came on, they had to sit back and they had to just say, do you know what, we aren't going to beat this Manchester United today, and there's a very good chance we could lose this if we don't get this bang on. So they sat back and they took the point in the end.
And the amount of criticism that United have got for that game, or that United did get, I know a lot of that's gone now with the Leipzig performance and result, but it was almost as though that we were the ones who were sat back defending the last 30 minutes. Like I said, they were, we didn't make tons and tons of chances, but we were the aggressors. We were the ones making the chances. Absolutely. We were the only team that was ever going to win that game the longer it went on. But speaking of changes and being able to rotate and avoid injuries, Ole's been talking about the fact that the 5 sub rule that was introduced at the end of last season has since been scrapped for the start of this season. He said we've already seen loads of injuries. Pep has spoken about it. We as managers and club medical staff have to look after them, and that's why we have to rest players at certain times. I would have liked to have had the 5 subs. Now, I remember one of the arguments that you saw when this was being debated and this was first voted on at the end of last season was that it would unfairly favour the bigger teams with bigger squads, because the likes of the teams who spend a bit less money, like Burnley or teams of that nature, where they wouldn't really have 5 players that they could bring on that would improve their team. So it gives an advantage to the teams that do. Do you think that the fairness of the sport has been preserved, or do you think it's more just a reason because people sort of want things back how they were? We are seeing an increased rate of injuries. Would 5 subs have helped that?
I think it would have done. I think that there is a little bit about that, and I kind of agree. I'd agree with the lower down managers saying that making 5 subs in a game is a huge advantage, especially when you can do what we saw what City did towards the end of last season. The 5 subs they were making was ridiculous. They can bring on a full new front 5 that is as strong, if not stronger sometimes. And you kind of go, that's ridiculous. I think you saw United in midweek when they played Leipzig, because the 5 subs is still in the Champions League. You brought on Rashford, Bruno, Cavani, Twanzebe and McTominay. That's a huge advantage against a team. I mean, if you could do that in the Premier League, you would see maybe a more compact starting 11 or something like that, and then players can just go, do you know what, we can now bring on 5 players and go at these teams. I do think there's a bit of, do you know what, we have to protect the players, but I can kind of understand why they've done it, and only time will tell whether injuries do happen in the Premier League, whether you do 3 subs or 5 subs, and whether this would have been a ridiculous advantage for the top teams, I don't know. And I think that maybe they made the right decision doing that.
Ole was talking after the Leipzig match, and he said, we don't really have wide wingers like Giggsy and David Beckham. We are more dependent on fullbacks coming in and giving us width. Now, that was in relation to this diamond formation that we saw, like I mentioned, for a period against PSG. We didn't start with that, but we sort of had that in midfield towards the middle section of that game. It also is in reference to the game against Leipzig, where we did play that diamond in the midfield. No true wingers. We played with 2 sort of attackers that can pull wide in Martial and Greenwood. But this diamond in midfield, and he mentions there about having fullbacks that can come on and give us width. Alex Telles is now out for at least 2 weeks with coronavirus. That's assuming he's fit and ready to go as soon as he tests negative. Aaron Wan-Bissaka isn't necessarily the greatest going forward, or I think we can all agree that's not the biggest strength to his game. Do you think we're going to continue to see this diamond, especially against teams where they like to have possession, they like to have the ball in midfield? Or do you think it was just a case of Martial's been suspended and then he's coming back in and just kind of muddling our way through a little bit? Or do you think this is how he wants to play going forward?
I don't think it's how he wants to play going forward. I don't think that we can realistically do that. I don't think we've got the players. I don't think that even Ollie's saying that, like he's mentioned about Wan-Bissaka playing on the right hand side. I don't think that he's the one that you would have signed if you're going to play this kind of formation or have seen that going forward. I like Alex Telles in that formation. I think that there's something in that. But like you said, we've not got the wingers to do it. Now, if Van der Beek can sort of play as that sort of withdrawn role where it's almost like a false nine almost in that diamond where he does the centre-forwards job, that leaves Rashford or Martial to drift left and Greenwood to drift to the right. I can kind of see it happening because we have to create through the wide positions. And I think on the left-hand side, you'll never have a problem. But it's still that problem where, yes, you've got Mason Greenwood there, but we don't have midfielders that like drifting to the right. You know, Bruno and Pogba all tend to drift to the left. Van der Beek coming in as kind of, he pops up in a few more positions, but again, isn't someone that naturally drifts to the right as Pogba does. And I still think we're lacking something down that right-hand side. I don't think we're going to see it too often, but I wouldn't be surprised to see it against teams that maybe Arsenal this weekend with the midfielders that they're going to put in there.
And they're going to try and play a bit more possession.
They are, yeah.
Sort of, keep the ball away from us. And also, diamond sounds cool, doesn't it? It's a cool little gemstone. It's really hard. You have to use
what did you say on the what song? What was the
Diamonds Are Forever?
Diamonds Are Forever.
They might be. If we keep getting
are.
results with it, if we keep winning 5-0, I think it'll stick around. Right, should we get into our predicted 11s then?
Let's do it.
We'll go with you first, but it should be noted that our predicted 11s are very similar to each other. So we'll start with yours.
Are quite similar. So my predicted 11. This is a predicted 11. Rather than a hopeful 11, because I'd like to see a couple of changes, but this is what I think he's going to go for. De Gea in goal, don't think there's any question about that. Back four, I would like to have seen the 3 maybe, but I think without having Telles, I don't quite see Brandon Williams doing that job as left wing back, and I don't think we've got enough strength there to do that formation. So I think he's going to go with the 4. Luke Shaw, Harry Maguire, Lindelof and Wan-Bissaka. Midfield 2, this is kind of to combat the fact that we can't go for the 3 at the back. I think that Arsenal's danger is Aubameyang on the left-hand side. Yeah. That's what it is. You saw how well Fred and McTominay kind of helped doubling up on Mbappe and Neymar, and I think that that's what's going to need to happen this weekend. I think that the fact that Aubameyang plays better on the left, but he did play on the right against Leicester, and I wouldn't be surprised if they thought, I fancy him up against Luke Shaw, so maybe he'll play on the right. And I think Fred and McTominay do very well of tracking back and filling in those gaps. My front 4, I've gone for Mason Greenwood on the right, Fernandes in the 10, Rashford on the left, and then I've gone for Cavani making his full debut through the middle. I've gone for this. I wouldn't be surprised if Dan James is in there. I think if depending on how Ollie wants to play, depending on whether, the thing is, Arsenal are now playing out from the back very well. If he wants to press them and really force the mistake out of it, I could see maybe Rashford going into the 9 and Dan James coming on the left. But I think maybe we might go a little bit more withdrawn, let them have the ball at the back, don't try and nick it, crowd out the spaces and then hit him a little bit on the counter-attack. But also, you've got Edison Cavani who's going to hold up the ball a bit more. Their centre-halves aren't the best and most physical centre-halves. You've got Holding, Louise, and I think it's Tierney that plays in there a lot. I think that Cavani can do a job against that. Again, my only other maybe I'd like to maybe see Tuanzebe get another run in the team. I think he did very well this couple of weeks ago against PSG, and we'll see how he gets blooded back into the squad. But I think that Ollie's going to go Lindelof and Maguire because I think that's his preferred 11.
Very nice. Right, so as you can see there, only one change. I've taken Cavani out. I've put Dan James in on that left-hand side, as you sort of alluded to there.
Yeah.
Same back 5. It's weird, isn't it? De Gea, we thought Henderson would I thought he was going to get more minutes than he's got. He's very much the second choice goalkeeper, isn't he? And that's because De Gea's been good.
Yeah.
Wan-Bissaka, Lindelof and Maguire and Shaw. No real alternatives to Shaw with Telles being out with coronavirus. Lindelof, I think, who's looked excellent against Leipzig, and I think he was probably our man of the match against Chelsea. Yeah. And Maguire, who, including the Newcastle match, has been good in recent weeks after that rough start to the season. Again, as you've gone there, Fred and McTominay, they're proving themselves to be industrious, hard-working. They can win against big teams. McTominay was on a yellow card after about 25 minutes against PSG and Neymar, and stood his ground, kept getting tackles in, didn't have that recklessness to get sent off.
Did he manage to get 90 minutes and still, or he played a lot of the game? He didn't get dragged off early like he thought he was going to
do. There's that midfield, and I think Greenwood's going to come back in from the start as well. Yeah. He was good against Leipzig, and a great finish we saw against Leipzig.
Goal.
Bruno, I think when he's fit, he starts pretty much, almost every game. Obviously, we didn't see him the other night, but the big league games where we need to start picking up some points now, he's going to play. I've gone Dan James on the left because of what you alluded to there, where you've said about this high pressing or the potential to press their defenders. It's one thing, I think Cavani's, he can do that, and he's got it in his head to do that, but he just doesn't quite have the pace of Dan James. He can't quite do it as effectively as Dan James, and I think he's looked quite good coming on as a sub, even though he was about 10 yards offside for two chances the other night. He did try the other night. And then I've gone with Rashford up front. He's got goals in him. He's on a hot run of form. I think it's 7 goals, 2 assists in 9 games so far this season for United, including obviously a stunning hat-trick against Leipzig the other night. I would give him a chance up front. Martial's suspended. It's his final game of suspension. So really, if you're going to play someone up front, it's like you said, maybe Cavani. But if you want to go for that sort of the bigger, the whole team press, give Martial or Rashford, a little bit of time up front. And also we see it sometimes anyway, a bit of a drift, a bit of a change. Maybe Greenwood will have some minutes up front. Maybe James will go on to the right. Maybe Rashford can come on to the left for a bit. I think we'll see a bit of a rotation, a fluid press in there.
You've got Dan James in there, and I think that everyone will lose their shit if that happens and he gets announced. I wouldn't be surprised if he goes to the same 11, even having Juan Mata in there as well. Everyone's going to go mad if that happens again. But I do think there's a method to having Dan James into this team this weekend. If he does start, I think that the fact that Arsenal and Arteta really want them to play out from the back, their centre halves are almost on the goal line taking the ball, and they're trying to play out from there. And it works a lot of the time. They did well against Liverpool in times when they played them in the Community Shield. They even got a goal out of it in the start of the league, even though they got beat 3-1. But at the same time, if you can force errors, because I said this to Ronaldo on the press conference reaction, I think what Arteta's done is give confidence to pretty average players. Yeah. Especially that back three, especially those centre-halves in David Luiz, Holding and Tierney. They aren't the best footballers. They still aren't world-class footballers. And I think if you can press them and you can force mistakes out of them, I think there's a chance that you can nick the ball off them and get a goal that way. So I wouldn't be surprised to see Dan James. Everyone's going to lose the shit if it happens, but I think he'd be a good player.
One interesting thing to note as well there, neither of us have got Paul Pogba in our starting 11.
And I don't think that's almost against Paul Pogba. I think that he played very well the other night against RB Leipzig. And I think you said, we said in the review, he looked a little bit sharp. He looked like he was back up to speed. And again, I wouldn't be surprised. Again, this is the thing with Ollie right now, is that we've played 3 different formations in the past 3 games. It wouldn't be surprised if he put any of those formations out. Or he could go back to the 4-3-3 he played at the end of last season, stick Matic in the 6th role, play Pogba and Fernandes, and go at Arsenal massively and try and do that way. I'm not sure he's going to do that. I still think in the back of his mind, he knows the threats that Arsenal have, and kind of sitting back a little bit and frustrating them. I think they'll get bored with that, and I think that hitting them on the counter attack a little bit, that Fred, McTominay and Bruno 3, I think there was a stat last week that every time they played 9 Premier League games, they've won 6 and drawn 3. And up against a big team like Arsenal, a bigger team like Arsenal, I won't say big team like Arsenal, I think that's probably a solid formation to go with.
And talking about Pogba as well, Solskjaer said, what's been the case with Paul after being injured and ill for so long is about getting fitness, getting the sharpness back, and the fitter he is, the more he can do. And I think we'll see that he's slowly been brought back in, and those cameos, those 25 minutes here and there, he's slowly looking sharper and better, and he's going back into it. And the great thing is, because we have got a few more players in that midfield now, even if you don't play every single minute, he's not, there was a time a few years ago when it was Wayne Rooney, when everyone was like, nah, he's not playing well enough. But every time he didn't play, we lost. And there's a case as well with Pogba a couple of seasons ago where you're sort of going, is this the best Paul Pogba? But when he didn't play, we didn't win. Whereas now we've got a bigger squad, certainly midfield, we've got a little bit of depth where if Pogba doesn't play, we can still win. So if he's not fully fit, if he's not playing at his best, give him a break, let him come back in slowly. There's plenty of games this season, as you've mentioned. Yeah. So, I think we'll be fine
and
without Paul Pogba from the start.
There's the argument that people have said about Paul Pogba saying that, he should be playing and all this, and he's going to get frustrated because he's not playing and things like that. And I kind of go, do you know what? As long as we're winning football games, it shouldn't matter. No. It shouldn't matter who's playing. If Van der Beek and Pogba are on the bench, okay, you can look at it and go, do you know what? Maybe they should deserve more minutes. But if we're winning football matches, things have to happen. You've seen Guardiola has rested De Bruyne and plays for big games and stuff, and you're going, what's he doing? But that's what happens. Manchester United, Fergie was the master of it. Are you looking on that bench going, hang on, why is Darren Gibson and Anderson our midfield and we beat Bayern Munich? You know, there's method to the madness in all this, and sometimes you have to sit back a little bit. You can't play your best players. And then if in them last 30 minutes you're bringing on Paul Pogba, Donny van der Beek, Cavani, what are 3 players you can change the game and go at a team?
Exactly. It's about winning, isn't it?
Yeah.
Over to Arsenal then briefly before we go. Their last 5 competitions, or the last 5 games in all competitions, 1 loss, 1 loss, 1. But interestingly, they beat Dundalk, they lost to Leicester, they beat Rapid Vienna, they lost to City, they beat Sheffield United. So whereas United tend to beat the good teams and struggle against the lesser teams, Arsenal beat the lesser teams and struggle against the big teams. Does that give you hope against them? Oh, not that you wouldn't have hope anyway, but does that give you an extra level of hope where they sort of, against the likes of Leicester and Man City, they've struggled?
I think it does a little bit, especially Leicester. Leicester have been okay this season, but nothing special, and also Man City as well. I think that Arsenal are a strange team almost. Like you said, they've beaten the lesser teams there. Dundalk. I mean, come on. If you can't beat Dundalk, there's a problem.
Three pigeons on their badge.
3 pigeons on their badge. Rapid Vienna again, not the biggest of teams. And Sheffield United have had a shocking start to the season. I think they're in the bottom of the league almost.
Burnley,
I think there's only Burnley below them. So they've had a really tough time. Again, my worry was that the game against Arsenal last year, I had full confidence with the team we had, and that was without Pogba, that was without Rashford, I think, as well. I think it's just had Martial in there. I was still confident that we were going to beat them with that Fred McTominay and Bruno midfield. And for some reason, we just didn't get going against them. And I'm hoping that that's not the case this time.
Do you know, based on the punditry and based on what you see in the media, you would think Arsenal had a great start to the season this year. For me, it's been like, Arteta's changed the club. He's changed the mentality. He's changed the way they play. They've lost 3 of the last 4 league matches. If we win this, we're above them. Like, everyone's acting
with
like they've started great. They've been this excellent team. Yeah, we've got a game in hand on them, and if we win this, we'll go above them. It's like, you would think United are in crisis and Arsenal are this rejuvenated, Cruyff-led Barcelona, but really, they're doing all right. They won the FA Cup last year, which is good, but I said there, they've lost 3 of the last 4 Premier League games against City, Leicester and Liverpool. So it's not like they're infallible or this great team that's completely turned it around.
No, and I think that the Arteta dream that they've got is they think he's
it's a dream,
the
lads.
Next thing since sliced bread.
The next thing since sliced bread.
The next thing, the best thing.
Next thing since sliced bread.
The next best thing since sliced bread.
Right, sorry.
They think he's quality. They think of all this. They think he's a tactical genius and how he's doing things. And to be honest, it's nothing special what he's doing at Arsenal. I think he's done the right thing. He's got players that are in there working hard. I think what he's done is very similar to what Ole did in terms of saying, do you know what? Your Sanchez's, your Lukaku's, you are good footballers, but you aren't working for this football team. Out you go. In the same way that they've done the same thing with Ozil. Even with midfielder, what was his name? Torreira didn't quite fit. He's gone. I think, was it Guendouzi as well? I think he's kind of just got rid of him. He said, look, do you know what? You're a good footballer, but you're not
People
fitting
used
us.
to love saying that Guendouzi was this great player. Do you remember Arsenal fans talking about Guendouzi?
The best.
What are you on about?
Ridiculous. So he's gone. I think Arteta's done well with that. But I don't fear many of their squad. I think Partey's come in and everyone was saying he was been the best thing ever. What midfielder? How have they got
the best debut I've ever seen? Someone said, because he got 68 passes against Rapid Vienna, or 80 passes.
And then didn't he give the ball away 14 times against Leicester?
Don't worry about that. Remember the debut, boy.
Wasn't it? Didn't someone? I think I saw a stat that he got dribbled past within 30 seconds of playing.
Yeah. That's all right. As long as you get
loads as
long as you can do loads of passes against Rapid Vienna, it's the best debut I've ever seen.
Harvey Barnes.
Anyway, what about Rooney's debut? Sorry, did not he scored a hat-trick in the Champions League.
Yeah. So Thomas Partey, I think, is a good signing, but he's not. Again, Atletico Madrid don't get rid of players. Just go on, you can have him, no problems. I can understand them selling Griezmann for 120 million, but they don't sell someone like Thomas Partey for 50 million for no reason whatsoever. You don't just do that to Atletico Madrid. Atletico Madrid are cleverer than that. So
they've got Kieran Trippier playing at right back. How clever can they be?
He's pretty good, Kieran Trippier. I like him.
He can whip a crossing.
I like him.
Right, give me some score predictions then. Oh, he's not so confident now.
2-1
You'll be
United.
slagging off Arteta, saying that Partey's just all tricks, no sticks. Now look at you.
2-1 United.
Oh, love that.
I do go 2-1 United a lot.
You do 2-1. I do 2-1 United. I said 2-1 United
good.
against Leipzig. I'm going to go a bit more bold. 0-0. No, I'm going to go 3-1 United. I think we're going to get some goals. Actually, no, 3-0.
3-0.
I think we're looking a bit better defensively. I think there's a real onus on defending well. We saw Maguire come out today and talk about how it felt like we might be on the way to a big crisis after that 6-1 against Tottenham. I think that scared them shitless the way a big loss should.
Yeah.
I think we'll defend well. I think they'll struggle to score against us. If they do score, I can see it being some scrappy, like the Luke Shaw own goal against Newcastle. When you think about it, we didn't concede against Chelsea. We didn't concede against Leipzig. We conceded an own goal against PSG, an own goal against Newcastle. We haven't actually. No one scored against us in 4 matches.
It's been 4 good defensive performances.
Yeah,
it really has.
What was a pretty shocking
Newcastle
one.
was again one of them. There was a little bit of nerves, I think you could see starting off, but I think that they settled in and played really well towards the end. And the same thing against PSG. To shut out Neymar and Mbappe, to not really give them too many clear-cut chances was very, very good. And I think that you're right. I think that the Maguire-Lindelof thing, I think, is starting to work a bit again. And I think that they've realised that Fred and McTominay in these big games, I think that might be the starting 11 for a while. Very exciting. Get your score predictions in at home then. I'm going to go 3-0. Alex is going 3-1. Make sure you like the video as well. Subscribe to Stretford Paddock if you haven't already. We're going to be here for the watch along tomorrow. We've got all sorts lined up. We've got pre-match shows. We've got Steve's opposition scouting preview. We've got all kinds of things going on. It's going to be great. It's not... Yeah. It's great. I just can't wait, Alex, if I'm quite honest with you. I can't wait to see Man United play Arsenal. Hopefully we get 3 points. We do need to push on in the league a little bit now, don't we? Yeah. Again, make sure you get your score predictions in the comments below. Thank you for joining me, Alex. Cheers, mate. Thanks for joining us at home. See you in a bit.